Hi, welcome to Up Your Nerd Cred. Did you used to know everything that was happening in the DC and Marvel universes? Has finding out that some superheroes are from Marvel and some are from DC blow your mind? Has keeping track of everything happening there, and then realizing that we're only talking about the comics universes, not the cinematic ones, and all the different universes with their own multiversal crises have gotten a little bit out of hand? Well, don't worry. Up Your Nerd Cred is here to talk about the gods cosplaying as men, the men cosplaying as gods, and how much the cinematic universes are really leading out. At the end of each episode, you'll hopefully know a little bit more than you did and get up your nerd cred. I'm your casual nerd host, Cece. I think it's possible that the current president has replaced Mustache Man somehow in the time traveler's focus because there have been assassination attempts and unsuccessful. Get it together.
Yeah, assassination attempts.
Listen, whoever is doing this at the time traveler agency is getting fired, okay? Their grandmother isn't even born yet, but they're getting fired. So,
and I'm
yeah.
your experts, quotation marks again, nerd host AM Diaz, and I'm currently planning ahead for the Uncanny Experience. A lot more stuff has been dropping, and in particular, Professor Wagner will be coming back for his second year of Drama 101.
As you can guess, though, means that he ain't new to it. He's true to it. And as our resident expert nerd, I do get to ask him all kinds of burning questions each week. But we want to make sure that we're clear that just because we're clarifying the format doesn't mean we skip out on it altogether, right? Of course, right. So, podcast listeners, what are we nerding out about? Just remember, it doesn't have to be just heroes and villains. You can nerd out about all kinds of things, okay? Going to a wedding is absolutely beautiful. Going to a wedding surrounded by a bunch of your friends is even more beautiful. And the fact that as a queer wedding, I'm surrounded by a bunch of my friends, and there are a number of people who have actually interacted in various ways. Anyway, love is beautiful.
How did you meet the bride? I slept with her. How did you meet the groom? I slept with him.
To be fair, I have not slept with the bride. Anyway, that's not important. So Aiden, what are you nerding out about?
Quite a bit, actually. The last couple of weeks, we've done a lot of things dropping. First off, it was announced that X-Men 97 is officially dropping on June 26th for Season 2. We have not had a new season of X-Men 97 since 2024, so very excited about this, and also very nervous because a lot of things have changed in the production since then.
Yeah.
The new Clayface movie trailer dropped. James Gunn dropped the trailer a few days ago, and it's kind of interesting how much this movie will be lifting from Batman the Animated Series. There's decades of Clayface stories. There's about 8 different Clayfaces that exist in the Batman comics.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, they've opted to use the Matt Hagen Clayface version from Batman the Animated Series, where he's an actor and he pisses off the mob and was disfigured. And yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with this one. The only downside is they are probably cutting out the queer subplot of his story that wasn't explicit in the animated series, but it was there. They had a character named Teddy Lupus who was his down low boyfriend.
Lupus? Teddy Lupus?
Lupus.
Really? Wow. Okay, so he's a wolf bear. Cool, got it.
He precedes the book that shall not be named.
I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying that man's name is Lupus is lupus, lupine, that whole thing is Latin. It counts as being old, the same way that cis is Latin. Anyway, uncanny shirt on though. What's up with that?
Oh yeah, doing some promos because we're getting closer and closer to Uncanny Experience, and we have made a few announcements. More members of the Xavier staff have been announced, including Bishop, Jean Grey, Nightcrawler, and many others. And also the theme for this year has been announced, in particular for our Saturday night and Sunday. We will be celebrating the wedding of Cyclops and Phoenix. We are coming up. Yeah, we're coming up on the anniversary of the comic where they officially got married.
Mm-hmm.
The writer of the book Fabian Nation will be there as a guest, and we will be having Jean Grey's bachelor party on Saturday night, and
Ooh.
then on Sunday, a proper festivities of the joining of Cyclops Scott Summers and Phoenix Jean Grey.
See, I love queer weddings. So, all right. Well, on that front, though, I'm nerding out about the fact that my entire internet feed has been filled with nothing but support for Meg the Stallion. It's a very pro-black feminism feed. It's a very queer feed that I have, and it's a lot of black women who have been rallying behind her because it's really beautiful to see, but it's something that we do as a whole. Also, Klay Thompson, you ruined the summer for a lot of dudes. Okay, it's gonna be a hot girl summer, and yelling get none of it. All right, because the solidarity is real. But I am actually tempted to try to see if I could possibly get a ticket to see her turn as Ziegler, because she's in the Broadway production of Moulin Rouge for another couple weeks. I've seen a bunch of people's pictures of her, and actually our previous guest Tiffy actually got to see the show at one point, I think. And
yes, very jealous.
I just want to support Meg in her time of need. I'm not jealous, maybe just a little. I'm not jealous. Anyway, having said that, like I said, I did just get back from a wedding, so I probably will be getting the nosebleeds, if anything. So we'll take a quick break for me to just go scroll some Instagram feeds, and we'll be back to Up Your Nerd Cred. Welcome back. So this season, we've been talking a lot about basically how much millennials love nostalgia, okay? Our 22-minute toy ads and everything, it really just sunk into our brain, and we love nostalgia, right? But the problem that I run into is that everyone sits there and it's like, oh no, we're so tired of the reboots. We're tired of the remakes. Why is the multiverse doing all of this stuff? What is happening? Why is everything always the same IP over and over again? Nothing is original. Nothing is new. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, really? Really? So you have not been skipping out on the indie films, right? You've been making sure that you don't necessarily need to have a whole deep familiarity with the IP to engage with something, right? No, a lot of times, original concepts, original ideas really struggle to break through. And I feel like it's
Nothing of what studios do to those original IPs. But they just don't give them enough attention because they're not the big IPs. I'm like Disney and Owl House. Years.
But even with that, there's still a lot of things where originality is still struggling to break through. And there's a lot of new characters that are introduced all the time. People have no idea, and I want to clarify too, because there's a lot of things where people complain about build your own character. Don't just reskin, don't just make Mary Jane black, right? Just do something new, do something different. All right, cool. Do you want to see a few people who they've made as new and exciting and who you probably don't have as much knowledge of despite the fact that they are new? Here we go. How about Moon Girl? Do you guys know who Moon Girl is?
I do.
Lunella Lafayette. She was created by Brandon Montclair and Amy Reeder and debuted in Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur #1 in 2015.
Yeah, she was arguably she is kind of a sequel of an original character, Moon Boy and Devil Dinosaur. People have no idea who the hell that guy is. And yeah, Lafayette on the other hand, so she's been one of those characters that was introduced as part of the big Inhuman push that was going on a few years back because Marvel didn't want to deal with the X-Men because they didn't own Disney didn't own the X-Men at the time. Yeah, so they're like, rather than try to continue telling stories of the, universally feeling of the outcast, we're going to do the one with the royal class system who picks and chooses who gets to have powers. Okay, but Luna was one of the interesting ones because she wasn't part of the Inhuman society. She was really more independent.
Mm-hmm.
And she is arguably the smartest girl or smartest person in the Marvel universe. Not girl, person. She puts Reed Richards to shame.
Yeah, I was saying they stay just making the brilliant people in the Marvel universe black women. I feel like they're Marvel has been trying to say and listen to black women, but I
I mean, we've got Ironheart, we've got Luella, not Luella, Lunella. I can say words.
Words are
Monet St.
hard.
Croix. We've got all of these, women of color who are super geniuses, and yeah, it's basically saying, listen to black women. They know what's going on.
Mm-hmm. So now, like, you're like, all right, this was 2015, right? Is there anybody since 2015 that's come out? Like, all right, how much time have you spent with Naomi McDuffie?
Naomi McDuffie.
So she was created by Brian Michael Bendis, David F. Walker, and Jamal Campbell, and she debuted in Naomi #1 in 2019.
Yep, and
How much shine has
this
she
was
gotten?
this was during the big Brian Michael Bendis period where he was working on like 20 different books at DC and kind of giving, I hate to say it, subpar work throughout it because of the fact he was working on too many at once.
Yeah.
Naomi was his big original character that he was really pushing for. She was this girl who was like half alien and had energy based, like light type powers.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a member of Young Justice for a hot minute. She was a member of the Justice League for a hot minute. They gave her own CW show that failed, unfortunately, because
Mm-hmm.
no one knew who this character was. And given like a proper superhero name, she had a lot of great potential, but it just kind of felt like no one except for Brian Michael Bendis knew what to do with her.
Yeah, and not knowing what to do with them means that like it's also gonna be difficult to like build like kind of like an awareness and kind of a fan because there's ways that fans could like push characters in different ways through like, but if you don't
Yeah,
really have a fandom that you can develop with it, then it's hard
yeah.
to.
Because well, it was like with Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, they were able to adapt her well into her own animated series.
Mhm.
And it was really successful. People really enjoyed the art style, the music choices, and they talked on some very, important subjects. Unfortunately, Disney got scared of some of those topics. For example, there was a trans episode that Disney has largely tried to bury, which was extremely disappointing. And then, like I say, Naomi also got her own series, but the problem was she had not built enough of an audience in the comics to really get the readers to watch her show. And, out of all of the stuff Brian Michael Bendis at the time was working on, I do think Naomi was one of the stronger stories. Young Justice was failing to, develop or do any storytelling. Wonder Twins was also kind of like same thing with Dial H for Hero. Naomi, that was his baby. That was the one that he was focused on. I'm pretty sure that she was based on somebody in his life. I remember, but I feel like there was it was a personal story for him. So there's some good work down there, almost bordering on Miles Morales reintroduction or Spider-Man stories. But unlike Miles, she was an original character. She wasn't a
Skin of an originally known character.
exactly.
And so, yeah, like the shine that we had for like the original IP, the original character, she didn't get the attention because people weren't as familiar, and so it kind of got lost in the shuffle. And like this is again, like I'm part of what it is that we're going to do this week, podcast listeners, is also introduce you to some characters who like I think are interesting that you should maybe go and look and like see if you can find stuff from that because maybe like we can stuff can be pushed back into the zeitgeist and we'll talk about that later. So like thinking about like for example we have the character of Mosaic, right? So whose given name is Morris Sackett. He was created by Jeffrey Thorne and Carrie Randolph and debuted in Mosaic #1 in 2016. And like this dude like body humping consciousness like you've quantum leaped the comic book and people still are just like completely whiffing it. Like you have a similar premise to something that's already out there, and people are just like, "What if instead of paying attention to it, I didn't?" How?
Yeah, well, like I say, Mosaic is a very interesting character. The problem, unfortunately, is that he was created during the Inhuman boom. Because in the comics, a lot of original characters were developed during the time. Again, Marvel didn't want to push the X-Men. They wanted different characters that they could have complete control over for movies and stuff like that. And humans were their way to do that because the storyline in the comics was Inhumans were able to get their powers through the Terrigen Mist, the special like chemical that unlocks hidden genetic potential. Fortunately, the Terrigen Mist was released on Earth in massive waves, and it caused the activation of a lot of people, including Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur, Miss Marvel, and you know, Mosaic, for example. And yeah, Mosaic was an Inhuman character, and unfortunately, like I said, the problem is he's an original character, great concept, but nobody really cared about the Inhumans that much. You know?
Yeah. So it's again like if they're not like the part where there's something that is new that's come out that can get attention and is not getting attention. And I want to make sure that we're on the same page here. This is not like limited to Marvel either, because like
Oh,
our like
100%.
I'm going to highlight next Sideways, aka Derek James, who was created by Dan DiDio, Justin Jordan, and Kenneth Rocafort, and debuted in Dark Knight's Metal #6 in 2018.
He
He's a
kind of he
teenage
kind of flew.
metahuman, the power to create rifts in midair and leap through dimensions. He's a American Chavez type. This is this is also another cool character and like a very specific you have Puerto Rican representation
Yeah, I mean that's a big
already there
thing.
already.
As I mentioned before, I didn't really know too much about this character because if I remember, he was kind of like it was like around the time where they were trying to do the rebirth period of DC post 52, the new 52 stories and stuff. And my first real introduction to him was in Young Justice, the Brian Michael Bendis book. He came in along with Aqualad, Spoiler, Arrowette, and was helping Young Justice, you know, during a thing with Star Labs and Superboy being lost in different dimensions. But yeah, it
Isn't
was like,
Superboy kind of lost on a regular basis? Like, doesn't that happen to him
unfortunately,
a lot?
yeah, both of the Superboys keep getting lost. John and Connor are perpetually being tossed into pocket dimensions and alternate universes and timelines and stuff like that. It's Sideways was, like I say, an interesting character. He was a Gotham native. He was, had these really interesting powers. But again, readers just weren't showing up for him because he was this brand new character, was not being utilized in books that really developed him. And he wasn't part of a greater team like, the Bat family or Superman's family or the Flash family.
Yeah. So they just kind of let this guy they just kind of hung him out to dry a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of don't remember the last time we've seen him. I think he was like in the background of the Dark Crisis storyline. Beyond that, it's like I don't think he's really been utilized. Naomi, I don't remember the last time Naomi was used. Lunella at least keeps getting brought back because she's one of the smartest people in the Marvel universe. But
Yeah, but fair, Squirrel Girl is also like the most powerful person in the Marvel universe, and she hasn't made her big. Anyway, well, moving on. Like on the front though, like one of the things that is worth noting on the representation front, I should say, one of the things that's worth noting is like they have attempted to do some other representation kind of characters. So like for example, Escapade, aka Sheila Sexton, as created by Charlie Jane Anders and Roa Stein, who debuted in the New Mutants #25. Okay. So this character is a mutant. She is a trickster and she's also trans. Um, and it's really it's really cool to have the opportunity to have characters who can do different things and be a completely different person and have a completely different life experience.
yeah, and with Sheila, she has thankfully been getting more attention than some of these other ones we've talked about. A lot of the writers at Marvel seem to really love this character because if they have an option to use her, I feel like they're jumping at it.
Well,
She was
that's
part of
good.
yeah, she was part of the Krakoa era of Marvel. She had a mm, uh, almost like kind of being mentored a little bit by Emma Frost, and
Ooh.
yeah, and Emma, she loves a powerful new mutant that she can train and mold. She
Well,
was
yeah.
part of the Avengers Academy, and she's had a bunch of different like adventures involving Doctor Doom and time travel and all jumping dimensions, and she's been getting utilized pretty well, I would say, and which is great because we lack so much trans representation in media that it's great that writers are seeing this character and readers are seeing this character and actually turning up for books that include her.
but it's also, like, part of why I want to, like, highlight them as well is the fact that, like, 2022 is fairly recent, and so this is still early on in the thing, so, like,
Oh
I'm
yeah.
trying to, like again, like, I'm encouraging people to go look at IP that you haven't really spent as much time with before. Like, go look after, like, Sheila, see if Sheila, like, warms the cockles of your cold, dead heart or something, alright? Because realistically speaking, having representation is important. Now, we will talk in a future episode about how like all representation doesn't necessarily need to be like isn't necessarily good representation. That representation does exist. So, Charlie Jane Anders is a trans creator, right? I'm pretty sure.
I
So,
believe so. Yes.
yeah, which is a really cool example of just like when people are able to make comics of the demographics that they're already in. There's a lot more of it that is really true to life. That's a lot more of it that is just, like, kind of you can see where it is that people are actually, like, having, like, kind of ways to view things completely differently than, like, the
100%. It's like
standard
it's
society.
always better when we're able to get creators who are, you know, from the demographic that they're writing about. Over at DC, for example, the character of Dreamer, another trans character, has been getting a lot of work written by, funny enough, the actress who played her in the Supergirl TV show and kind of originated this version of the character, Cole Maines. Amazing woman, very funny, very, very creative. And she's been doing a lot of like stories with Dreamer that DC has been commissioning for her to write. Dreamer solo series, a Suicide Squad, a Secret Six.
Ooh,
So, and the thing is, her voice for these stories are very real because of the fact that she's writing a trans character, and as a trans woman herself, she's able to really get into that headspace and really show that on the page.
yeah, and I would like to also highlight the fact that this is not a new instance either. Like, we have had a lot of cishet white men doing a lot of comic books. But we have other ones, like, so for example, we have Icon, aka Augustus Freeman IV, who was created by Dwayne McDuffie and Dennis Cohen, who debuted in Icon #1 in 1993, right? So it's a fully original Black hero who is like fully created by like Black creators.
Mhm.
And
He was
so,
one of
yeah,
the first characters of the Milestone line. Milestone was a black-owned, black creator comic company
mm,
that was distributed through DC. For the longest time, they were part of their own individual universe, and it's been kind of playfully dubbed the Dakota universe because most of the stories took place in Dakota.
okay,
But over the years, especially after the passing of Dwayne McDuffie, a lot of his characters did get folded into DC to various degrees. And Icon, along with his sidekick Rocket, for Milestone, were the essentially kind of Superman, but also Batman and Robin equivalents. They were the more prominent heroes. He was a very Superman type character. Funny enough, he appeared in the Young Justice cartoon, and apparently Superman asked him to join the Justice League because he thought he was also Kryptonian. Because
oh,
Icon is an alien, and he was really excited. It's like, oh no,
no, baby, I'm so
and
sorry. Everyone's not an alien like you, okay? There are lots of
yeah,
aliens, but they're not all like you. I'm so sorry, Kal-El.
yeah, and Icon was a great character because he was very stoic, but he was also very interesting. Because he was also a lawyer, and he had just this very interesting dynamic with Rocket because she essentially convinced him to become a superhero. Yeah,
Okay.
and you know if you ever get a chance to read the old Milestone comics or the new ones, or even recently DC did a Milestone Dakota incident story where it's telling where the Milestone universe fits into the current DC universe. And yeah, it's very interesting. It takes place years after basically the original stories, but they've been updated and altered. Like there's Adult Static and Icon and Rocket return and stuff like that.
Ooh, that's really cool. So I think it's worth noting a little bit. Like I want to kind of comment on how every IP does start out as new at some point. So I want to make sure that I'm clear that I'm not just like saying this like anything that's like new, like people just refuse to look at it, right? But the biggest problem
Yeah, I
that
mean,
we have
Milestone has a
is,
huge fan base.
yeah, we have the characters and they're not getting the support and attention that they need to be able to like really reach out and meet the kind of masses. And so it's kind of important to like really spend some time figuring out like why why does it keep happening? Why do we keep just having these things where, like, only things that people are interested in are, getting only things that people have seen before are they halfway interested in? So, and I mentioned the MCU earlier, and I really wanna highlight how 2008, the MCU, like, as it is now, was a huge gamble, okay? Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America were, like, what, 3rd tier? Like, in, like, the Marvel comic kinda thing, like,
Yeah.
they were
I mean,
so
they were always pillars of the Marvel universe forever. But in terms of like, you know, greater society, everybody knew who Captain America was. I mean, that's
yeah,
just iconic. But a lot of people weren't that deeply familiar with the Marvel's version of Thor or Iron Man as much. Because, yeah, Iron Man had his animated series in the 90s with that insane mullet. It was still just they were not Spider-Man or the X-Men. They were not
yeah.
able to hit that level of societal recognition, and yeah, like you said, it was a gamble because they were playing with characters that had never been properly adapted to the big screen like that.
Mm, and it turns out though, if you put a little bit of time and investment into properties and like you give people the opportunity to be excited about something they haven't seen before, turns out you're able to actually like grow and build an audience of things and they want to come and see things. And the MCU is just like constantly making millions and millions of dollars on a regular basis to the point where Robert Downey Jr. is coming back to play a whole different other character. Like,
Doom.
they're just like, oh yeah, like let's just make new characters. We're tired of the old IP. Make new characters, make new things. Okay, we make new things, and then what happens? You're not giving them
Yeah.
time to become nostalgia, like exciting, interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, the problem of that is also just like it's not that the fans also aren't showing up, it's that the new properties aren't getting the support from the higher ups.
Yeah,
You know, a lot of characters who have been created as original brand new characters, they don't get the push that they should. They don't like get their own TV shows, they don't get their own movies. They
or even when
and
they
when they're
do,
pitched. And that's the
yeah.
thing, they're pitched. A lot of them are pitched, but 4 out of 5 times the studio will be like trying to make changes that kind of dilute the original idea of these creations, or they will just be like, "Yeah, but, you know, we'd rather just make another Batman movie because we trust that. Oh, Batman will always sell." And then it's like, I mean, one milestone characters that we've talked about, Static Shock, he was a character that got his own animated series, and
He was pretty cool.
it was really cool, and it was very, popular. People really enjoyed it. He was a character that the first milestone character that got folded into the DC universe in any variation as an animated series, growing up to becoming a member of the Justice League and whatnot. And but the thing was, despite how popular his show was, it did deal with a lot of studio interference where they did dilute the original story deal. They also did not push him as much as they should have. Because I really do feel like Static should have been pushed a lot more to the forefront. He could have easily become like, they always say Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman are the Trinity, and Harley Quinn has become like the fourth member of popularity of the Mount Rushmore of DC. And I do feel like characters like Static could have been that fourth pillar.
Yeah, but like,
But the thing was, the studio didn't trust it because a movie for Static Shock has been discussed for ages and it has never gotten off the ground.
and
Same
like,
thing with Icon. An Icon movie was, I remember being tossed around a long time ago, and I don't think, it ever got any traction.
and so it's frustrating because you constantly see complaining about how everything is the same, how it's all like there's nothing new, there's nothing interesting. But the problem is that there is effort that is required to discover something that is new. And if studios aren't necessarily like, for example, Eyes of Wakanda hardly got any attention. Like,
Yeah,
honestly,
Disney did not promote that nearly as much as they should have because I barely heard anything about it.
like weird. I don't know how much more, like, not touching grass that we could be, but still, like, I barely heard about Eyes of Wakanda myself, so they're not and it's again, it's a popular IP that they have, they're still just, like, they're not putting it like, this is an original section of the IP, and they're not giving enough, like, time for it, and so it's really frustrating with that. There's also the part too that if there is something that someone tries to put out and it is viewed as being too different, then all of a sudden, like, the fanboys just, like, have a fit and they review bomb the bejesus out of things. Like, why did She-Hulk and the Acolyte have such bad reviews?
Toxic fanboys, which
Like,
ironic how much people hated the She-Hulk series because that stuck. That honestly, of many of the properties that Marvel has done, it stuck closest to the comics in terms of like tone and approach and everything.
and the fact that Jennifer Walters likes to get down. Listen, I'm just gonna throw that out there. Like, Matt Murdock doing the Stride of Pride, I 100% support that, and also is exactly the kind of thing that you would expect if you were like reading She-Hulk enough that you would 100% know. But
Uh
yeah,
huh. But yeah, no, it's very true that it's like huge argument that I'm always seeing is like, especially when it comes to any time that a legacy character is introduced as a person of color or something like that, fans freak out and just be like, they don't need to take over this character. Why don't you just create an original new character? And it's like, all right,
oh,
here
okay,
is an
great.
original new
Which one do you want?
character. Yeah, because it was like when they did stuff like had Kamala Khan as Miss Marvel. She was a Muslim superhero taking over the mantle of Miss Marvel from Carol, who had moved on to Captain Marvel. And
Yeah.
people were literally saying, well, why don't you just create a new character? Why does she have to take over, be Miss Marvel? Same thing with Miles Morales. When he became Spider-Man, they're like, just create a new character. You don't need to kill off Spider-Man and replace him with this. Firestorm, same thing. You killed, and unfortunately with Firestorm, felt a bit more like jaded because he died so unceremoniously compared to other characters. Like he literally died on one page of a big company wide book called Identity Crisis.
Wow.
Yeah, he got stabbed. The original white Firestorm got stabbed in the chest with a sword and blew up. And then they replaced him with a African American black character who people started getting pissed off about. And I'm like, that one felt a little bit more legitimate because of the fact they just kind of felt like they really fast to kill off one character to introduce a
Yeah.
new version.
And that's
Like there's
fair, but
no development.
yeah, there's a lot of instances though that like if somebody is slightly different, if they are not like whatever it is that people already have like accepted as like this is what I want, the
Yeah,
safe choices, the studio meddling choices are the ones that we constantly get. Mm.
exactly. Because they're not they're gonna reboot Batman and Superman 1,000 times rather than have somebody else take over the role of Batman.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's kind of part of the reason why they haven't done a Batman Beyond movie yet. Because they're afraid that people won't follow Terry McGinnis compared to Bruce Wayne, even though Terry had one of the most successful Batman shows of the DC animated universe.
True. Um, and I also want to highlight too, like, there's a lot of headline bias as well too. Like people will sit there and the boxing biopic Christie came out around the same time frame that the vampire movie Sinners came out. The original IP Sinners came out, and Variety posted about how like the Variety used glowing terms to talk about how like Sydney Sweeney's like flop of a movie got like $1.3 million in his opening weekend, right? One of the openings of the entirety of 2025, right? But when Sinners had made 61 million opening weekend, Variety wanted to be like, oh, well, like it was a $90 million budget, so they haven't made back all of their money on opening weekend. Like, come on. Christie ultimately earned $2.3 million, and Sinners got more Oscar nominations than any previous movies. But there's also a conversation that we need to have about Ryan Coogler not getting the Best Director award, but that's a whole other conversation to have.
Yeah, that's an entire episode dedicated.
Yeah. But, like, even with
It's just
that,
basically us just swearing the entire time.
like, they're sitting there like, "Oh, no, like, this movie, it's going to fail. Like, we're expecting this movie to fail. Like, it's not gonna make enough money." And then when it turns around and does make all of this money because people are just like, "Yeah, I actually want to see something original, something interesting," and, like,
Mhm.
Like, there was a lot of Sinners that I think that was more word of mouth than it was, like, the advertising for
Oh,
it.
definitely was. Before the movie actually came out, I saw maybe, like, a handful of trailers for it, but it didn't feel like it was getting pushed that much. But then it's like everybody was telling me, it's like, "Oh my god, you have to see have you seen Sinners? Oh my god, you have to see Sinners." And it's like,
No plans of
that
seeing that movie until everybody talked about it that Thursday, and I'm like, "Well, I need to go and see it." I saw it that Friday, and, has had I had my
yeah.
like, I sat there and figured out how they, like, get, like, them like, I was sitting there looking at the IMAX screen when Ryan was able to do that, like, that 70 millimeter re-release thing. Like, I was sitting there, like, on the second row, okay, I'm practically in Mississippi, but the movie was so good that I'm like, "Yeah, Imma do it." And the surprise success that people seem to find from original IP continues to blow my mind because
Oh, yeah, I mean, K-pop Demon Hunters.
people sat
Think
there
about
and, like,
that.
were
That
just
is
like,
Yeah, it's like that one everyone slept on. Nobody knew about K-pop Demon Hunters. Netflix did nothing to promote it, and it literally just showed up on Netflix one day, and people were just like, "Huh, what's this?" And
it
then it
came
became a
out in
global phenomenon.
July, and, like,
Yeah.
in October, like, these children were still, like they were all dressed up as Rumi's, Mira and
Oh, yeah. No, it's like that was my gym playlist for the better part of, like, 6 months, and it's one of those things that it's just like this original property, it's like, this is an example of the stuff that people are creating, and studios and companies and the media are not pushing them until they have the success.
which
And
even things that are
then suddenly
successful,
they're
they
all
still
like,
will
"Oh,
just
we
pull.
all knew it was gonna be amazing. We knew it was gonna be great." It's like,
Mhm.
liars.
Yeah. So, honestly,
Because they didn't trust it. They didn't trust that property because it was new. And
and
meanwhile, they pushed all these other properties that have been done to death.
honestly, I'm not mad about the fact that, Sydney keeps having, like, flops, but that's mostly because of the fact that, like, she wanted to do that one jeans ad, and, that ain't it, girl.
I was gonna say, did you hear about the Euphoria snubs?
You mean the part where Zendaya was, like, going and being friends with everybody except for Sydney? Yes, yes. So, we're gonna go take a quick break, and actually, instead of thinking about, like, fun original IPs, we're gonna go be catty for a minute, and then we'll be back to Up Your Nerd Cred. Welcome back to our thrilling conclusion. So, I think what we have more or less come to agree as a podcast is that, there's tons and tons of original content out there, and it's not supported the same way that things that people have heard of before are. They wanna spend money on things that they've heard of before, which is all fine, well, and good, but, like, that's how you kind of get stuck in nostalgia loops where you only end up with reboots and remakes and not originals.
Yeah, because like I say, don't get me wrong, you know, so many stories are comfort. I always feel good with, a Marvel property or a DC property like Batman, Superman, X-Men, whatnot. But like you said, we kind of get stuck in a loop of nostalgia because it just keep rebooting the property every few years. And it's nice when we get to read something or see something that is, new and original. Like I say, K-pop Demon Hunters, for example, or Sinners. Those were new properties and everyone was so excited and it created entire new communities of people to, come together and loved on this new concept and property. And same thing can happen in the comics. There's so many characters who have such a devoted fan base. People love these characters so much, but they get overlooked because they don't get pushed by the bigger studios and stuff like that. I mean, Icon, Rocket, and Static all appeared in the Young Justice cartoon a few years ago as characters, but they generally kind of played more supporting characters and getting main stories.
Yeah.
Rocket was lucky, got a bit more attention, especially during the last season, but it was still just like you're putting a lot of focus on these other characters which are more popular or mainstream, but you got these other characters who are originals and new and people love them. More focus.
It would be nice. We can't always just have, like, the same things that we've been looking at forever because, you know, even even the autistics need a little bit of a change once in a while. Not a lot of change, it's not get crazy, but, a little bit of change. We need something new, okay? So, Support your indie films, okay? Like,
Right now, Invincible is one of the most popular animated shows, and a lot of people didn't even know that property existed until the show came out.
also, I'm gonna highlight too, support your fan fiction writers if you don't have like, a bunch of money to spend on stuff, okay? Like, there are a number of people who are sitting there getting their start on Archive of Our Own, on fanfiction.net, on all of those places. Like, do the work to discover something new, basically. That's what I mean. Do the work to discover something new because you'll find something that you love. There's plenty of
Yeah,
stuff that you love now that you didn't know that you loved until you did the work to find something new.
yeah. Whenever I hear somebody talk about like fan fiction, I just remember how so often people would be like, "Oh, that's so cringe," writing fan fiction. And it's like, yeah, but a lot of people get their start writing characters they love, writing stories they love. So give
Go
it a
with it.
chance.
Listen,
And
if
sometimes,
nothing
and it's like
else,
embrace
like
the
we had
cringe.
50 Shades of Grey, okay? Somebody can do better than 50 Shades of Grey. Somewhere on
I mean,
AO3 is something better than 50 Shades of
Heated
Grey.
Rivalry is one of the most popular properties out right now, and that started off as Captain America and Bucky fan fiction.
Fan fiction! I'm just saying, like, there's plenty of original IP out there that, anyway. So rather than harp on the same thing, we're going to just take a moment to highlight a few like birthdays and a few like happenings for your nerdy calendar this week. So we have the birthday of Dick Ayers on April 28th, 1924. So he was a comic book artist and cartoonist and was actually best known for being like one of Jack Kirby's big inkers during late 1950s and 60s. And was actually included on some like the earliest issues of the Fantastic Four. We have William Randolph Hearst was born on April 29th. I'm sorry. Yeah, April 29th, 1863. And I will part of the reason that we're including him in this is because as a major newspaper syndication guy, like the big newspaper publisher, actually the newspapers having the syndicated comic strips are part of what really kept comics and such going. So even though he was a real big yellow journalism fan, we are going to give him a shout out for keeping the newspapers with their
He's the
comic
reason we
strips.
have Popeye, Peanuts, and so many other beloved comics, essentially.
So, on April 27th of 2018, we have the release of Infinity War, Avengers Infinity War. So this is when we're all getting ready to find out about how much
Everything's
crying we
been
can
building up.
do. How
Yeah.
much crying you can do. I feel like it's as much
Drama!
not as much crying as in Endgame, but definitely a lot of crying. Um,
Yeah, because at least with Infinity War, you're like, they have to bring them back. There has to be a way to bring them back.
yeah. So, but as far as the, other things that are happening, we have on May 1st, The Incredible Hulk #2. That's our first time that we actually get to see a green Hulk, which is very cool.
Yeah, there's a great story about why they went from gray to green. It was literally because green showed up better on the
Yeah.
page.
And then on April 30th, we have Cindy Moon making her first appearance in Amazing Spider-Man #1, and she goes on to become the stupendous
And while she is a great character and I love her, her backstory is so cliche tied to Peter Parker's that I'm just like, this feels like fan fiction.
See,
The
listen,
cringe fan fiction that we
and they're getting
that we
paid
talk
for
about.
it. Those creators got paid
I know,
for
and
it.
that's the thing. They're getting paid for that. And I'm like, I support that. I support them getting paid. But I will say, when I read her first story, I'm like, this really does feel like something I read on fanfiction.net one time when I was younger.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
But she's a great character and still deserves all the love.
yeah. Again, this is a character that we haven't gotten a lot of attention on, and we could probably get some more. So let's pay attention to our underrated characters. But listeners, as much as I have been upset about the characters that we're not seeing, we have in fact come to the end of our podcast. And I know you're like, how was this over so soon? Well, guess what? You know, next episode is coming out sooner than you think, actually. You're also more than welcome to listen to this episode again if that's not fast enough. Or join our Patreon, where you can get solo scripts and behind the scenes footage.
Nerd cred takes time to build.
But if you can actually pull yourself out of bed to go see something independent once in a while, you will discover something like honestly, my new favorite indie movie, Straight On Till Morning, which I told you about a couple of weeks ago, and I need to go and get on Amazon and download it. It's a queer horror story, and it's amazing, and I love it. So, yeah.
And now it's time to mention that we have an Instagram. We're on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube, and we're working on expanding our reach. If you like this episode, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe, especially if you're trying to up your nerd cred. Didn't talk.
You could follow us on Instagram at Up Your Nerd Cred Pod. If you are looking for me across platforms, I'm at CIRACDAVIS.
She sounded a little aggressive there, didn't she? And I am AM Diaz Art. Come yell at me about continuity errors and show me your fan art either way.
Or the fan fiction, actually, as we're thinking
Oh, yeah,
of
no,
it.
it's like I love a good fan fiction.
So, yeah. But anything else?
Well, if you have any burning questions that you want us to discuss, you can up your nerd cred. Make sure you like and subscribe, leave comments, and we might pick your question. Yeah. And if we pick your question, we'll shout you out at the discussion segment.
All right. So make sure you get your friends to like and subscribe too, right? And your family members and the coworkers that you trust not to be weird about listening to the same podcast as you. And do you have an emergency vet? Because you should also go and make sure that your
And
dog
good
is...
night, everybody.